Hi, everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Today's poll question on this Tuesday at Smerconish.com. Should the IRS audit taxpayers of all income levels with equal frequency to ensure fairness and transparency in the tax system? Thank you to Parks Casino for sponsoring today's poll question at Smerconish.com. You know that it's my casino of choice. They've got everything you want under that roof: action, excitement, headline entertainment. Conveniently located in the Philly burbs, that means 90 minutes from New York City, exit 6 off the New Jersey Turnpike. Probably more table games closer to New Jerseyans at parks than down the shore, as we say. Thousands of hot slots, state-of-the-art sports book, beautiful poker room, all-weather beer garden, a collection of award-winning restaurants. Parks Casino, this is how you win. And just announced a lot of headline entertainment. Comedian Brian Regan, comedian Russell Peters, Larry the Cable Guy, country artist Ashley McBride, Taj Mahal and Kebmo, Clutch, Gary Clark Jr., Mark Normand, the comedian, KC and the Sunshine Band, the English reggae and pop band UB40, and a heck of a lot more. ParksCasino.com to buy all your tickets for these great shows. Go mingle at Parks Casino. Parks Casino, this is how you win. Got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So the result of the Monday poll question really surprised me. I wonder if people thought it through. Maybe they did. Maybe I'm selling them short. It's just not the result I anticipated. 35,596 voted. Answer the question recently raised by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. If you're smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, should you expect society to pay when you get sick? 62.33% said, no, you should not, which is what Bobby argued in that interview that he did with the CBS medical correspondent. I think people were voting for, I get it. I certainly get it. Commonsensically, I get it. But if you're taking the next step then, and you're saying, and therefore we're not going to cover you if you're smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, then it's the ultimate slippery slope. Ice cream, booze. I mean, where do you draw that line? The reason I was asking the question is because this was the first interview that the Secretary of Health and Human Services had done with one of the major networks. He did it with the CBS medical correspondent, a doctor named John LaPook. And Kennedy said what I just quoted relative to the poll question about smoking cigarettes. He then went on to say that it's an American's choice to eat donuts all day or drink sodas. And he promised he wasn't going to take those choices away, quote, but in terms of should you then expect society to care for you when you predictably get very sick at the same level as somebody who was born with a congenital disease? The best answer is that we need to realign our incentives so that economic incentives for the individuals and the industry are in alignment with public health outcomes that we desire. So he makes the point, right? I mean, we're definitely going to care for someone whose health is not a function of their lifestyle choices. Should we also be covering a person who makes bad lifestyle choices to the same extent? The arguments, as I summarized yesterday, against what Kennedy says, the yes vote. The yes vote meaning, in this context, sure, we're going to take care of the 3-pack-a-day smoker. That viewpoint is one that says healthcare is a human right. Addiction and unhealthy habits often stem from deep-seated issues, poverty, trauma, mental illness, not simple responsibility, and that prevention and education are the better path. The majority vote yesterday at Smerconish.com were embracing an idea of taxpayers not being financially responsible for chronic and self-inflicted health problems, a personal responsibility argument. Won the day yesterday in the voting. Okay, relative to today's poll question, I really like this. I mean, it may be a bit esoteric. I don't know. Maybe not. It's tax day. Okay, it's April 15. It is tax day, and I just was reading a page one above the fold story in the New York Times talking about what's going on in Washington relative to the new budget bill and, by extension, the new tax bill. What's interesting is that Republicans are wrestling with how to make good on President Trump's campaign promises while extending the 2017 tax cuts. In other words, remember, He went to Las Vegas and he said, we're not going to tax your tips. Now he's got to make good on that. He also said that he wasn't going to tax overtime pay. He also said that he wasn't going to tax Social Security benefits. And what the Times page one story makes clear is that Republicans now are contemplating raising taxes on the rich. And why are they contemplating raising taxes on the rich? Because they need to make up for the shortfalls that will come from delivering on Trump's other campaign promises, but also because the Republican constituency is not solely a bunch of country clubbers. Republicans have done so well in recent elections, especially in the Trump era, with working class voters, that they feel obligated to extend tax relief to that constituency. So how do you do it? Maybe you tax the rich. Maybe you tax the rich. The top marginal tax rate post 2017 tax cuts is 37%. It had been 39.6%. So keep an eye on where the top marginal tax rate goes in the budget reconciliation and more generally budget negotiations about to unfold take place. But getting to today's poll question, there is then the question of whether the wealthy and the lower income should be audited at a similar rate of frequency. And that's what I'm getting at with the poll question. And maybe in the way that I worded it, as I'm looking at it now, maybe I kind of tilted the scale, put my thumb on the scale, because I've weighted it in a way that maybe you'll be more inclined to say yes, but I'm going to give you the backstory on this before you vote, I hope. Should the IRS audit taxpayers of all income levels with equal frequency to ensure fairness and transparency in the tax system? And I think instinctively, we say, yeah, well, of course. We should be auditing people at all levels of income and in equal proportion. Isn't that your instinct? Remember, the Biden administration sought to beef up the IRS. They sought to beef up the IRS and give the IRS more of an ability to conduct audits and raise revenue as a result. Because the Biden administration told us, and I'm sure there's truth in this, that the IRS was antiquated. Government is always the last to be able to take advantage of the best in technology. Trump, via Doge and elsewhere, is seeking to scale back and lay off the IRS workforce, which quite naturally is going to result in fewer audits. So this is the question. With limited resources, should audits be performed across all income brackets? And you know the argument for that, basic fairness. Or Willie Sutton, wasn't it Willie Sutton? Do you go where the money is? And if audits if there aren't enough resources in the IRS to perform those audits, then maybe the resources you have ought to be targeted toward the wealthy, right? And corporations and partnerships, because that's where the money is. Ben Blatt, also in the Times, this piece ran, I think, on the front page yesterday. The Internal Revenue Service's audit rate has been lower this decade than in most taxpayers' lifetimes. That's according to a New York Times analysis. And if the Trump administration follows through with plans to cut the agency's workforce, audits will almost certainly become even rarer. The most recent IRS data shows that the audit rate of individual taxpayers has decreased by about 2/3 since 2010. That's a lot. Exact comparisons of audit rates are challenging because the IRS has changed its definitions over time, but the Times analysis of historical IRS data found that the effective audit rate between 2020 and 2023, all under 0.5%, were lower than at any published audit rate since at least 1950. In 1980, the agency's published audit rate was over 2%. In 1960, it was over 3%. In the 2010s, audit rates plunged for all income levels. For most Americans, an audit might have been a 1 in 100 event at the beginning of the decade. By the end of the decade, it was even less. So your odds are less than 1 in 100 of being audited. There's actually a chart in this Times coverage that shows that in 2010, the audit rate for those earning under $25,000 was 1%. It's now less than 0.4%. For those earning over 10 million, the audit rate in 2010 had been 21.5%. See the disparity? From 1% to 20%. Now it's dropped to below 11%. And then a corresponding chart also explains, well, okay, how much revenue, what additional revenue gets collected after an audit? If it's under $25,000, it's usually $4.6 thousand. If you're doing an audit of somebody over $10 million, $147 million is the additional revenue in thousands. I didn't explain that well, but hopefully you get the point. I mean, the point is, where does the money come from for the IRS? It comes from the audits of the wealthy, the wealthiest among us. This is what inspired me to make it a poll question today. The Biden administration said its goal was to raise audit rates only on high-income earners, partnerships, and corporations. The IRS commissioner at the time, Danny Werfel, promised the agency would ensure audit rates do not increase for those earning less than $400,000 a year. Focusing audits on higher earners has political logic, but it also makes sense from a strict return on investment standpoint, and then gives the data that I shared with you. An in-person audit of someone in the top 0.1% of earners takes twice as many audit hours as the average in-person audit, but the potential additional tax revenue is many times greater. It's harder for the IRS to audit someone, and you can imagine why, because chances are they have investments, they have partnerships, they have lawyers. But the return, it's harder for the IRS to audit someone who's wealthy, but the return for the IRS is going to be much more significant. On the other hand, if you're concentrating all of your efforts on the wealthiest among us, then that doesn't seem fair, does it? Again, the poll question as I worded it, I love it for tax day. I think it's a real winner. I've just got to fully explain it on radio as I'm explaining it to all of you. Should the IRS audit taxpayers of all income levels with equal frequency to ensure fairness and transparency in the tax system? And I probably should have added, if I had the character left, I probably would have added, even if it means that they'll generate less. Because if you're going to spread those resources across all income levels, you're going to leave money on the table. Because by going after the $25,000 income earner or the $50,000 income earner, you're spending less time, as Willie Sutton would say, where the money is. So what's the answer to the poll question? Is the answer yes, because of fairness, transparency, deterrence? It avoids political weaponization. You know, uniform audits reduce claims of targeting based on political or social status. It's neutral in terms of administration. Or is the answer no, because of efficiency, complexity, resource allocation? You know, equal audits will stretch IRS resources thin on the low-risk filers and ultimately waste, if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, the return that could come from the wealthiest among us. So that's what makes it a great poll question on this tax day, 2025. Should the IRS audit taxpayers of all income levels with equal frequency to ensure fairness? On one hand, it'd be fair, but you're going to give up money. Okay, so what then is the real role of the IRS? What then is the real role of the IRS? Is it money generation? Is it revenue raising? Because if that's the point, then you ought to be concentrating on the wealthy much more so. And that's historically what they've done. All right, go vote. Love it. Hope you love it. Like and subscribe and set yourself up for notifications. That's Smerconish.com, the YouTube page for poll questions. Thank you, gang. Thank you, Parks Casino. Appreciate all of you.